Hello, everyone, and welcome to Magicians Without Borders Conversations. This is episode 40, and it's our mailbag episode. So tonight we're going to discuss some questions with Tom that you guys have sent, and we appreciate that. But before we start, as always, we have some announcements. So, hey, do you shop on Amazon? Do you ever go to Amazon.com and order anything? So if you do, we would love for you to try this next time you go to Amazon. Instead of going to Amazon.com, go to smile.amazon.com. Whenever you go to smile.amazon.com, when you shop, Amazon gives. So every time that you shop on Amazon, on smile.amazon.com, you can select a nonprofit to support, and Amazon will donate some money of your purchase to that nonprofit. So you can in this instance select Magicians Without Borders. So if you select Magicians Without Borders, when you go to smile.amazon.com and you shop, whatever you shop is the same website, same product, same everything. You just select Magicians Without Borders as your selected nonprofit and order anything that you like. And in doing so, you are supporting us in a different way. So please, if you shop on Amazon.com, please consider going to smile.amazon.com and selecting Magicians Without Borders as your nonprofit. So that's a good way to support us. And as always, I am pitching the corporate.magicanswithoutborders.com. This is a great way to also support us if you are part of a remote team or if you work in a company that does virtual events. If your company does virtual events or hosts multiple online meetings during the week and you need to enhance the well-being of your coworkers, this is a great way to do so. So you can go to corporate.magicianswithoutborders.com to see our services there. But here I want to leave you with a little bit of a teaser of what that is. So with that, we are supporting our kids, our students from the slums, particularly in Colombia and also in Costa Rica, who perform with us during the show. So that's a great way to support us and them through this a new virtual environment that we're all a part of. And if you want to learn how to do magic or you want us to do a private performance for you at home, you can go to our store. You can go to store.magicianswithoutborders.com, and there you can get live workshops for us or live magic shows from us directly to your house wherever you are. And you can give this as a gift as well. So if you want to give a gift of become a magician to somebody that you know might might like learning magic from us, you can go to our store and purchase that Become a Magician self-paced video magic course. So this is a great way to support us as well. And today is the last Wednesday of the month, so today is our mailbag episode. So we're going to review some questions and comments that you might have sent to us at podcast@magicianswithoutborders.com, or that you've sent to our Twitter page at magicianswb, or in any comments of our social media. So in order to do that, I'm going to welcome our founder, Tom. How are you, Tom?
I am very good. We're having beautiful weather here in the Green Mountains of Vermont. And I'm once again really happy to be here. And I'm still kind of cooking in my head from our conversation last week with Michael Wald and that trip down memory lane. And, you know, the magic shop, I have to say this, the magic shop that I founded with my friend Milton Nichols was a time in my life that, you know, I haven't really thought very much about, you know, and Michael bringing me back to that last week and saying what a place that was. It was more than just a shop. It was this place where he used the term people could come and hang out, and where young magicians could hang out with older magicians and seasoned professional performers and magicians who were just beginning. And there was a parlor where there were chairs and people could sit around and talk. And it just made me appreciate that time in my life in a way that, you know, I really haven't in a long time. So I want to thank Michael. And I really, really look forward to him being with us again next week, because it, like many of our conversations, but that one especially, it felt like we could have gone on and on and on for 2 or 3 hours, you know? So
totally, I can definitely second that, because that conversation was so good, and I can see how it brought both of you back to that time and place, right?
So I know it was kind of wild seeing him, this grown man who's been working as a school psychologist for 35 or 40 years. I'm not sure how long. and a lot of what he talked about, he said the magic shop was an important thing in his life at that crucial time. And hopefully we're going to talk more about that adolescent time in our life when we're moving from being a child to being an adult and moving through that time of adolescence, which can be very difficult, and the magic shop and magic helped him make that transition from being a child to being an adult. And it added something to that, so I love that.
I agree. It was pretty lively conversation, and where I was, chatting with Roy, who's joining us, and who says that you need to go to smile.amazon.com if you're in another country, and maybe the you have another extension on the Amazon link. Make sure you go to smile.com, and over there you can select it. But yes, Tom, I mean, it was such a lively conversation, and I can only imagine how it must have felt being there with you. And in a for me, it's like in a moment in time where conversations where they had to ensue. I mean, because right now everyone's on their mobile phones, and it's so digital right now. But
Right.
back in the day,
Back in the day.
when you guys were there, I mean, that, I don't know, it must have been a sense of camaraderie, a little bit, I don't know, a
Yeah.
little bit, but I don't know, pretty cool. And I'm looking forward on Michael joining us next week to continue.
I think just to respond to that for a moment, I think it was very much what a lot of us have been missing during the pandemic. Janet and I had our first couples over for dinner like 2 nights ago, and we sat outside, but there they were, and we didn't have masks on, and we were sitting there, and we're very lucky here in the United States that so many people, in spite of some resistance among some people, a lot of people are getting vaccinated, and almost all of our friends are vaccinated, and we're vaccinated 6 weeks ago. But it's personal, face to face. And that's really what the magic shop was about. It was what I just said a moment ago. It was real human beings, older men, unfortunately, only men, um, who had been doing magic for 40 or 50 years in their life, sitting in the back room of the magic shop. And we would send young magicians back there who had just bought a magic trick, and they would teach them that trick in the old way, from like an apprentice, or like the master passing it on to the apprentice, and that's so important, and some of that, there's amazing things, of course, because of the internet and this very thing we're doing right now for amazing things. And yet there's that other thing, that face to face, in person thing that I think is still a really wonderful, wonderful thing. So,
Yes, awesome, Tom. So yeah, lovely conversation last week, and for this week we want to answer some of our questions from the mailbag episode. So we got just a couple, but that got me thinking on what usually what magicians do, and in particular what Magicians Without Borders does, which is mixing things together, right? Mixing things together that are not supposed to be mixed, or that are usually not mixed. And I think that's what magicians do a lot, right? Those a lot of tricks and a lot of gimmicks that we use are stuff that they're not supposed to be together, but they are together, right? And that creates an impossibility, right? It creates a moment of wonder. And that's what magicians do, right? And I think Magicians Without Borders, when mixing social work with magic, it does produce something that's different, that's wonderful, that creates awe and transformation, when those things are usually not together, right?
Right.
So, with that in mind, the first question says, it's directed to you because it says, how can you complement your work on magic, in magic? I don't know. Your
With
work
magic, maybe? I don't know.
with
Yeah.
magic, your work on magic with your work on dreams. So, how do you think you can complement, or how have you complemented those two?
That's a really uh, amazing question, in some ways. Mm, I think I think I'd have to say the common element between my work with dreams and my work with magic is that I think magic and dreams awakens the imagination. We might call it wonder. Whoa, how did he do? Oh my God, that's amazing. You know, when you wake up from a dream, like I woke up from a dream
Hmm.
yesterday morning, and it was a dream about a friend of mine, John O'Donoghue from Ireland, who died, unfortunately, at a fairly young age. And he was just an amazing man. And in the dream, there are these various memorials to people who have died are in the dream. And they all involve bicycles somehow. Now, there's this bicycle, and it's in honor of John O'Donoghue. Now,
Hmm.
John was not a cyclist, as far as I know. I don't think so. I don't associate him with bicycles. So, to think about this dream, I had to start imagining what is the connection between John and bicycles and whatever. And it led me in a whole bunch of different ways in my imagination. And I think as magicians, we do something like you just said, Carlos. And you've said this before, and I find it really, really interesting. And I think you're one of the few people who I've ever heard, that like humor. You put two things together that don't fit together, and it makes it funny, you know.
Hmm.
Um, that in magic, we put two things. Can you give an example of what you mean by magicians putting two things together that don't usually go together and it becomes magic? Can you think of something?
Yes, of course. For example, if you think on a great magic effect, right, and any great magic effect, right, when you know the secret, right, you might find out that, oh, it's something very small, right? It's a little clip here, it's a little thread, it's a little trap door, it's a little mirror, it's something that's not supposed to be in that setting, and because it's not supposed to be there, right, our brain just passes as inadvertent. We
It's
just
not
don't.
there. Yeah,
It's
right.
not there, but it is the thing that makes the magic work, right? Without that,
Right.
it won't make the magic work, right? We were
Yeah.
playing right before we started with some gaff decks, right? And some of those have something in them, right, that they're not supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
But when you put them together, right, then it creates a beautiful illusion, right? But they're not supposed to be together, right? Like the mind of the magician trying to bring stuff from other places and putting them here. It just works, right? It's just it creates the wonder. It makes it It
I
makes it.
was thinking of a very, very simple example of that, Carlos,
Mhm.
that we as magicians um, maybe don't realize is the jumbo card. Like they're a jumbo card.
Mhm.
People know about these little cards, but 99% of the people we perform for have never seen a large card, a big card,
I agree.
you know?
Mhm.
So you have them pick a card and you make mistakes and you can't find their card, you miscall it, you say it was the five of them. They say, no, it wasn't. And it was, no, it wasn't, you know. And then you drop the deck into a bag, a paper bag, and you say, now think of your card. Okay. Send it into my mind. No, I can't
Mhm.
see it. Make it bigger. Imagine your card bigger. And they
Mhm.
imagine it bigger. And you pull out of the bag a big card, a jumbo card. Now, that, first of all, is their card, which is
Right.
amazing. But
Mhm.
even more amazing to them is that the card is big. Now, that's not amazing to magicians at all because all magicians have played or learned, they know about jumbo cards. But an ordinary lay audience, a card that has gotten bigger in the bag, that's the illusion,
Yeah.
is amazing, you know, and it's a basically fairly simple trick if you know how to do it. It's
Yes.
fairly simple,
Super simple,
but
but the magic of it, the wonder of it, the illusion of it getting bigger and then having a big card that does not belong there, right? But it's there. I mean, it makes the whole illusion real.
yeah. And now to go back to your question, that's the kind of thing that happens in dreams all
Mhm.
the time. You know, he reached into the bag and pulled out this big card, you know, like that's a dream kind of image, you know, like you just drop this regular deck of cards into the bag and then you pulled out one of them and it was big and it happened to be their card that they chose freely, supposedly, right?
Mhm.
Um, so there's something I think that my sense of psychology is not so much rooted in the mind,
Mhm.
like in the world of thinking, as in the world of imagination.
Mhm.
And I know that for 25 years I worked as a psychotherapist working with people who were stuck in their lives and they were in despair because they couldn't imagine, there's that word, they couldn't imagine that their life could be any different than the way it was. And
Mhm.
in a sense, mental illness or problems, emotional problems that people bring to a psychotherapist are a lack of imagination, that they can't imagine their life being any different than the terrible life that they're living at the moment. And what therapy does is awakens the imagination and they begin to awaken. And we've said this probably 100 times in all these 40 episodes. They begin to imagine that what was impossible is now possible. And I think dreams actually help awaken the. Why did I dream of John O'Donoghue and a bicycle? I have to awaken my imagination to start answering that question or trying to understand that dream. I don't know. Does that help at all?
That yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, with that last explanation there, of how when we're stuck, right, and we don't have the, I don't know how to call it, the ability to imagine, or we don't give ourselves the permission to imagine, right, a different future.
All that can be a way to say it. Yep.
So when we're in that situation, right, we need a trigger. We need something that to snap us out, right? Or to something needs to happen so that we can, explore different situations, different outcomes, and I think that does tie a lot with what we do in Magicians Without Borders, meaning that we're trying to give our students the possibility of imagining a different future, right? Because they
Absolutely. Yeah.
most of the time living in the situation that they live, their future is limited, right? They might not have psychological trauma, or they don't might not have a great, I don't know, if they're not diagnosed with something of mental health
Right.
necessarily,
Right. But
but their situation seems like there's no, they can't go further than what they can see with their peers, right? That their
right.
future has to be the same that their peers, so they cannot imagine them having a different future, going different places, doing different jobs or occupations, or just, experiencing a different life than their peers or their elders, right? That
Right.
they're here to experience this, and that's what they got, right? And well, that's unfortunate, and I think the magic does is the key that allows them to do exactly that, to say, if this is possible, right, if I am, wow, if I just witness this, right, then maybe I can go a little bit further with my imagination on my future, right?
Yeah.
And I think that keyword you just said, allowing them to imagining something that's possible to become possible. I think that that's just, I mean, it does tie up pretty cool. But as you said, you have to be either willing, or you have to be aware that you need to nourish that imagination. You need to be aware that, as you were saying on psychotherapy, if you're going through therapy, or me as somebody that has gone to therapy all my life, I know that one of the biggest moments for me was, I don't remember how my therapy did it because it was a long time ago, but it was like I like all my problems and all the voices in my head, I had to picture them as a little animal on top of my shoulder, and just saying that, just be aware that it's there, right? But also be aware that if it is there, it's because you put it there, right? And you
Yeah.
can make him either go away, or acknowledge that he's there but not pay attention or whatever. But you have to be able to make that awareness, and then imagine something else. Try to move past it. And I think
Yeah.
it's pretty.
I think it was the romantic British poet William Blake, who said, "We become what we behold, what we see." And our folks like Tamara and Diego and those who have been doing these amazing shows for the Google corporations around the world, and their mind is blown that they're performing for Google. They lived in a very specific kind of circumscribed world, a kind of small world, and they were going to become pretty much what they beheld, what they saw around them, and the role models and examples, and that. And then you came in, Ryan came in, and you came in, and I think you opened up their world. their world became bigger and they could imagine more possibilities. And you saw them in a different way, and you said certain things to them, like you could be blah blah blah, you could, and that was impossible in that earlier view of their world, that their world opened up. And I think that's what a mentor does. They see them in a way that other people maybe don't see them, or at least they say it to them in a way that if a parent says it, oh, that's what you can become, anything you want. Well, that's what parents are supposed to say. But if a coach says it, or a magic teacher says it, or a friend says it, it's different.
Yes, and that brings me back to the class we had on Monday. On Monday, I was helping out on a class on a local chapter here, and we were introducing the kids on we do a little course on entrepreneurship basic things. So we give them personal finance, and then we give them sales tips and sales, a little sales course that we developed, and we were introducing that sales course. And on that sales course, I one of the approaches we have with them is like, we ask them, how do you generate the money, right? We're living in this society, whether we like it or not, in this here in Colombia and in the States, in a capitalistic system that
Yeah.
has all its flaws, right? But we are in it, right?
Yeah.
So if we're in it, we need to learn how to navigate it. But for them, when we ask them, how do you generate the money? And the simplest answer, they're no, you have to go work for a boss. That's the word. Find a boss, right? Like not even a job, but like find somebody that will give you money to do something, but not necessarily as job seeking, but to find a patron. Patron is not the word, or patron.
A patron. Yeah.
Yeah, like find some. I don't know if it's patron the word, but that's a word that we use here. Like find
Yes.
somebody that will tell you what to do, right? And usually those kinds of work that they do are very mundane, very, you know, either do cleaning or do errands, or
Yeah.
stuff that it's limited and anybody can do. But that's their mindset, right? And then one of the challenging questions that we ask is, okay, now we're gonna try and look around, right, your world around you, and figure out something that you can create a company around, right? And they're like, what do you mean create a company, right? And just that question challenges them, because they have this, and we've seen this everywhere that we ask this question, is that they say no, the companies that are made by people that have money, right? And they're the ones that have companies because they have the money, right? the, but they don't see it the other way around. Like when you live in abundance, you think, hey, if I want money, I'm gonna have a company. I'm gonna develop a company. I'm gonna try to sell a product or service to earn money, right? To make money. And that switch, it's very hard to do when you're living in poverty. But it's amazing when you see that click on them, right? Because you say you can do it, right? I mean, you could everything that you see around you, the plates that you eat at home with, the little glasses that you have at home, the little gadgets that you use, somebody made them, right? And somebody markets them and sells them. But you can imagine that. I mean, give them the freedom to explore, to open up their imagination. And that, I don't know, that's wonderful, and I'm very eager to continue these classes with them, because we're going to discover that, and they are going to discover that
Wow.
that is a possibility. That doesn't mean that it's easy or not, but it's like a great entrepreneur from India said. He said, being poor is tough as shit, but being an entrepreneur is tough as shit. So which one tough as shit would you like, right? Yeah. And that's very good to open that opportunity up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're saying is the original question back there is, how does this work that we're doing relate to the work I do with dreams? And in many ways, you're trying to get those young folks to dream about something, like what, how can you, do you have a dream? No, I don't. Well, and then you begin to talk with them and give examples, and then they say, I'd really like to dot dot dot. I'd like to, be a teacher, or I'd like to be a this, or I'd like to be a that. And then you they start imagining their lives differently, and their horizon gets bigger. Like when you show that little video of their neighborhood, the houses are so close together, and yet the world is out there, but we have to open their imaginations to see it.
I agree. That's wonderful. I
I
love that.
love that you're teaching them that. Thank you, Carlos. That's great.
Yes, it's awesome, and actually that course on sales was put together by two of our volunteers that work in very different fields. One, she works as a meeting planner for corporations and countries, and she sells Colombia to the world. And the other one sells software. So it's pretty cool how those two different profiles, came together, and both in their own lives have had a great change by being in sales. And I know that sales is something that's challenging for most people, that you're not sure how to start, or where to start, or what are the tools, the tips, and everything. And even more so when you are living in a society that oppresses you because you don't have a purchasing power, right? You don't have economic power, so you're oppressed by that system. So when you have to go into that system and say, hey, I have something of value to sell to you, right? Or to a service, or a product for you, it's super challenging because you have to have a lot of self-confidence in what you are selling, right?
Yeah.
And that's the work that we do with the magic, right? The magic gives them that self-confidence so that they can in turn later, go and sell it. It's a great course, and actually one of the little modules is taught by a guy that sells on one of the greatest hotel chains in America, called the Hard Rock Cafe Hotels.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So for the Mexican part, for the West Coast, he does sales for that, especially for ones. And he sent us like 10 videos of tips and tricks that he has learned in over 20 years of being in sales. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
That's great.
awesome, Tom. So how about we transition here to the second question that I think it's a little bit related, because it says, hey, Tom, what are your experiences on synchronicity? Because you talked about that on last episode,
Yeah.
right? And we've talked about it, how the chapter in Colombia got started with the magazine, Genie magazine, and Gustavo Lorgia being in it,
Right.
and
Yeah, there have been a lot of for those folks who don't know what synchronicity is, it's when it's SYN, which is together in Greek, and chronicity is time. It's like when two moments of time come together, and you can say it was just a coincidence and dismiss it, or you can say that they came together and they have some kind of meaning. And one that just popped into my mind, and it's a really pretty magical one, is Janet and I were in Serbia, and we were heading from Serbia to Bosnia the next day or that night by bus, and we traveled by bus. And Janet fell asleep on the bus. We both did. And she had a dream about her brother, Charlie, who died when he was only 10 years old of leukemia. And it was a very powerful time in her life. He was just a couple years older than Janet. Janet had 8 brothers and a sister, big family. And she had this dream, but it was more than a dream, she said, because she said, I had this amazing thing happen to me. Charlie came to me last night. She didn't say I had a dream about Charlie. She said, Charlie came to me last night on the bus and I saw him. So we got to Sarajevo, and we checked into a little hotel that we were staying in. And I had a very scary moment, actually, in that hotel. I went into the bathroom and I spread the curtain that was covering the window in that bathroom. And there was what was called Sniper's Ridge. Like during the terrible war, just a year earlier in Sarajevo, there were snipers up on that very hill that I was looking at right outside the window, and they were killing individual people. And if I had been there a year earlier and the sniper happened to see that curtain open, bam, I would have been dead. It was like amazing. So we went to the UN High Commission for Refugees because they had set up some shows in refugee camps for us. And we got to the UN headquarters in Sarajevo, and the person who was helping us, the public information officer, as they called her, she said, I'm sorry, but there's been some trouble in the refugee camps and we can't go to the refugee camp and perform today. But for some reason, from a children's hospital that specializes in leukemia patients, they called us this morning and they would like you to go over and perform for those children who have leukemia in that hospital. And Janet looked at me and she said, I think Charlie arranged this show. So that's an example of synchronicity. Now, we could have said that was a complete coincidence.
Yeah.
She has a dream or a vision of Charlie, who died 30 years, 40 years earlier, who died of leukemia. We show up. The shows have been canceled, but one at a leukemia hospital. I actually have a picture downstairs. Can I run down and get it from that show?
Go ahead.
I'll be right back. You talk to people.
While Tom goes and gets that picture, we'll do a pause and I'll tell you different ways that you can support us. One is through Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/MWB, and that is a different way that you can support us. If you go to patreon.com/MWB, you can see different tiers of support that you can give us, and in each one you'll get different rewards. So we're going to do different videos for you, different things that we're going to give different types of Patreons, and that is another way that you can support the work that we do, that funds shows for refugees all over the world, and our education chapters that we've started in 6 different countries, in over a dozen of them in 6 different countries, and people like Diego and Tamara that are performing with us for clients like Google. So this is a good way to support us. So let's bring back Tom and see if he found that picture. You found it, Tom?
I did find it, and it was such a special moment that we have this picture hanging up downstairs. And I don't know whether you're going to be able to see it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so there's me.
Yeah, there's you
with a mask on, because this young girl her immune system was very damaged, and she had a bald head because she was getting chemotherapy and radiation. And that's from that very show that I just talked to you about.
It did mean a lot. It did mean a lot. It wasn't just coincidence for you guys.
It didn't, and it's one of the. I'm actually trying to work on a book about all these stories that have happened to us. It's called The Soul of Magic. That's the working title of this book. And that's one of the stories in the book of how it seemed like this work with Magicians Without Borders, there were other hands organizing our experiences, invisible hands. We call them angel moments, Janet and I, like angels arranged that show somehow. But anyhow, that's an example for me of synchronicity, where 2 things happened. Janet has this dream of her brother Charlie, who died of leukemia, and we show up in Sarajevo. Our shows in the refugee camps have been canceled, but another show happened to get arranged that was for children with leukemia in a hospital.
Beautiful.
I don't know how you can just write that off as just, oh, that was just so good. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm trying to think, because there's so many moments like that with the work that we do in Magicians Without Borders, and I can think of a couple. So the one that we've talked a lot is me meeting Ryan when he was here, right?
Yeah.
Like just a week, less than a week. He had not been here a week, and we were in contact because it was it was meant to be, and I had just researched Magicians Without Borders, and so that was that moment. But another moment was when in Costa Rica, the way that Diego tells the story is probably going to be better than what I do now, but we wanted to start the program in Costa Rica, right? We had some partners there that wanted to do it, but we were missing a magician that was socially conscious and was willing to do the work with Magicians Without Borders, right? We talked with a couple of them. There was no feeling, we couldn't do it with them. But then I remember that I said, okay, I've exhausted my knowledge of magicians from Costa Rica. We tried from my network, we couldn't do it. How about you guys try? Like, if you see a magician in your lives, right, just tell your network, hey, we're looking for a magician that might want to work with us, right? And we had a meeting, that was said, and let's say this was like a Wednesday, right? On that week's Friday, Diego, a magician from Magicians Without Borders now in Costa Rica, we had not met him, we didn't know he existed, but one of the best friends of our partners there, she was seeing a corporate show, right? And she saw a magician, right? And she's like, oh, that magician's pretty cool, right? And it was something that had to do with a social thing. I don't remember if it was something for a foundation or something, but he's like, hey, maybe that's the magician. And the way Diego tells this story is pretty cool, but it's something like Diego was there, right? And then he sat down and the event continued, right? And then he saw a woman, kneeling down almost, crawling in the floor because she didn't want to interrupt the event, to tap him in the shoulder, right? And say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I need to talk to you, right? Because there's something called Magicians Without Borders, and we're looking for a magician. We're looking for a magician. You might be it, right? And he was there sitting in the event, hearing that, right? And he had just weeks prior seen the video of Magicians Without Borders and seeing and writing that famous Facebook message, all that, right? And he's like, no, don't tell me about Magicians Without Borders. I know what Magicians Without Borders is. I've been trying to get in touch with them, and it's like that moment of wow, right? And then that's how we got there, right?
Yeah.
So that's another moment of synchronicity.
Yeah.
I think
And I just think, people say, I just think that those kind of things, that there's something out there in the world that brings these things together, that brought Diego into our lives. And then he took that long, like 20-hour bus ride to El Salvador to meet me. And I just think, I love to imagine that the world out there is not a dead world, that it's really alive, and that there's all this amazing stuff going on all the time. And we only every now and then, I think it's happening all the time, but I think we only cue into it like maybe 1 out of a 50 times, but I think it's going on all the time. We just miss it a lot of the time.
Pretty cool.
And so, I know Michael wants to talk more about this next week.
Definitely, I think.
And I would love anybody who hears this show to tell us examples in your life of synchronistic events, things that have happened that just seem like way more than just coincidence, that this means something, that this person came into my life, or that this happened, or my car broke down in that town where I met the woman I would end up marrying. There are amazing things that happen to people. So
that would be awesome. So please do send those at magicianswb on Twitter, or send us an email, podcast at magicianswithoutborders.com, if you want us to discuss that further. And I want to leave all of us with a thought. And we've been talking about, how to complement things that are not supposed to complement each other, or things that are very far apart, and this synchronicity. And I want to introduce a term that's a Japanese term, that's ikigai. So ikigai is kind of like the reason for living. So it's a Japanese concept referring to having a purpose in life, right? So and the etymology, it comes from iki, which is to live, and gai, that means reason, right? So like the reason to live, right? And there's a beautiful a diagram that I'm showing right now. And if you guys listening on the podcast, you can search ikigai, where you write ikigai is with an IKIGAI. And that ikigai, it's like the way of finding that purpose, right? Of finding that purpose or that reason for living. And that is the intersection of four things: of what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. So if you
Mm.
those four things in circles, and those circles, intersect with each other, you're going to have four intersections. You're going to have one intersection that is the intersection between what you love and what you're good at, right? And that intersection is called the passion, right? Something you're very passionate about.
Oh,
The intersection between what you're good at and what you get paid for, that intersection is called the profession, right? Something that you can be a professional on or off, right? And then the intersection between what you can get paid for and what the world needs, that's a vocation, right? That is a vocation. And the intersection between what you love and what the world needs, that intersection is a mission, right? That could be your mission, right? And then the idea is that if you find an intersection of the four circles, right? That's your ikigai, right? That is your reason for being or your purpose for living. So of course there's more intersections when you see the diagram. When you see the diagram, you can see that there's more intersections. That when you have three intersections of, for example, what you love, what you're good at, and when you're paid for it, you can find satisfaction, but feeling somehow useless, right? Or when you have intersections of what you're good at, what you get paid for, and what the world needs, you're comfortable, but you might feel empty. And when you find an intersection with what you love, what you get paid for, and what the world needs, you feel excitement and complacency, but there is a sense of uncertainty. And the other intersection is between what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs, and that gives you feelings of delight and fullness, but not wealth. And that's why we need to try and find the four intersections, that ikigai. And that is hard to do. I mean, the concept is beautiful, but it is of course hard to do. And I think that us well, this is the question for you, Tom. In my life, I have found it very hard to be in the center of the ikigai, right? I've certainly been in the intersection of two circles, right, and maybe even three, and for brief moments on the intersection of four. And that's the question that I wanted to ask you. So someone that has lived a little bit longer than I have, and that has done a bunch of things. And when you hear this concept, what comes to mind? What do you make of this concept?
I think it's I really um, like so many things, Carlos. You bring new things into my life all the time, and this is the first time I'm ever seeing this particular um, idea, this ikigai reason for being. But the idea itself is not new to me in many ways. And when we talk about Magicians Without Borders to high school students, say, we say to them, from one point of view, it's kind of silly, like being a magician, and now I'm going to use magic to change the world or to make the world a better place or to respond to, as it says over there, what the world needs. And
Mm,
yet, that's what we do. It's something I love. It's something I was pretty good at. Could you put that back up there? Saying, oh, that's great. It's something that we could, you know, appeal to people to pay us to do this, to support Magicians Without Borders. And God knows it's something the world really needs, even if it's just to laugh and to have wonder in a very painful, difficult situation like a refugee camp or an orphanage. And that idea of passion, profession, vocation, and mission, it just feels fantastic. And like I said, when we talk to high school students, we say, what is it that you love? Like, what is your passion? Like our friend Ben, his passion was volleyball. I'm sorry, his passion was soccer, was football.
Mhm.
And he started, and it was his profession. And he was called to do it. It was his vocation. And he turned it into a mission by starting Soccer Without Borders. And we say to kids, maybe what you're good at, what you love, what your passion is mathematics. How can you use mathematics? You know, to does the world need that? Well, you could become a tutor in an orphanage around the world and teach kids. If it's really your passion and you love mathematics, you can turn kids on, and they might end up becoming engineers or teachers or whatever. Whatever you love, whatever you're good at, you can get paid for it and make the world a better place by doing it in a particular kind of way. I think this is brilliant. I think we got to talk more about this. I know
Yes.
we're getting close to the end, but once again, thank you for bringing something. You know what this does is, like a lot of charts, is it organizes things in a way that we can really understand them, and it pulls them together. And I love charts that have overlapping circles like this. Terrific.
Mhm. It's wonderful, but I wanted to end this with a what you just said, because what we do, uh, I think, can be summed up in this phrase, that it's not the magic that we do, is what we do with magic, right?
Absolutely. That's our version of what you just had on there, that ikigai.
Exactly, and you can substitute the word magic with something that might be your passion, your mission, your vocation, or your profession. So you can actually try and align and design your life around something that can fit into this sentence. I
Yeah.
think that's what I want to leave you, Tom, and our listeners with a for this week's episode. I mean, it's those three questions were a handful, and it
Oh,
got us.
thank you for sending those in. What a perfect way to end, Carlos. It's not the magic we do, it's what we do with the magic. It's not the math we do, it's what we do with the math. It's not the soccer we do, it's what we do with fill in the blank in one's own life, and you can do what you do in a way that it becomes a mission, not just an occupation or a job. Wow.
Very, very good way to end, and let that marinate. And well, thank you, Tom, for being here with us, and we'll see you and everybody else next week.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you again next week. Bless you.
Bye.